Welcome to the Family Business Podcast, the Spelts Family Business Podcast. We just did a name change.
Yes, we did.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Kobe.
And we're excited to talk about today's topic. The Spelts family is kind of infamous in some ways, famous and infamous. Just
right.
Not famous, just mainly infamous.
Yep.
But we're going to talk about our family, and this is one of the episodes. I don't know.
Gosh,
12.
I think it's 11 or 12, or
Yeah.
we should just stop trying to say the numbers because we never check before.
We screw it up.
We
every
set
time.
everything up and just completely forget to check what number it is.
Yeah, so we'll put it on the thing once we save it to the file and know,
Yep.
This is 11 or 12 or whatever. But this will be a fun one. We have a unique family. It's a tight-knit family. We come from a long line of families that really, I think work well together, have normal fights and like battles and internal challenges and those kinds of things. But I think there's some things, I had tons of opinions about parenting when you guys were little.
Yeah.
As you got older in teenager years, I was like, I know nothing, literally nothing. But now that you're becoming adults, I'm feeling like there's some traits that we wanted to teach that actually came about. But I also think there might be things that we didn't even know we were teaching that just happened. All of you know how to work really hard, which I think is awesome. And I hope that continues. They say you're learning to parent. You parent your youngest kids. You learn how to parent on your oldest kids.
Yeah.
So we definitely learned how to parent with you. So Kobe's the oldest, has 3 sisters, and then a youngest brother.
Yep.
And so right now ages, you're turning 23 here pretty soon.
Mm-hmm.
Cameron's 20. She's getting married. Ellie is 18. Lucy is 16, and Grace 12.
Yep.
So that's the crew. So growing up in a big family, that's bigger than most families, I'd say.
For sure.
In today's world, back in the day, that was average, but today's world, that's pretty big. So Mom came from a family with 7 kids. I came from a family with 7 kids, but only 6 that survived. My brother passed away right after he was born, and so parents had 7 kids, but 6 that lived. I have 5 sisters. So we come from a long line of family, big families, lots of family get-togethers. When we do a family reunion, you have to rent out the whole park just because it's so many people.
So many people.
It's kind of wild. It's kind of hard to do. So I put down some notes, and then Kobe, I had you kind of review it and think about what other traits you feel like were in there as well, and we can just kind of go through and talk about them. And
yeah, for sure. I think it's kind of fitting now that we've changed the name of the podcast to the Spelts family. It'll kind of give people an idea of who we are, And we've got some very defining traits as a family. Like we're very, very stubborn, very hardworking. We've got a lot of very interesting things that, like you said, we're famous for and mostly infamous for, But yeah, so I think it'll be kind of cool to talk about some of those things that you guys kind of instilled in us. I know we're very unique in a lot of ways, but yeah, I think it'll be cool. So
yes, and we changed the name Spelts Family Podcast primarily because when you search for it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, there's 5 or 6, that are the Family Business Podcast. And so we just wanted to differentiate it a little. And our last name is weird. In fact, when Mom first met me and she heard Spelts was my last name, she was like, "Oh, yeah, I don't want to marry him."
Right.
We weren't even dating or anything. She just was like, "I don't like that name." She came from Miller, which is
super common, super normal.
Everybody knows how to spell it.
Nobody knows how to spell Spelts. They always put a Z at the end or whatever.
I don't know why sometimes people have a hard time even just being able to conceptualize what it is. And I'm like, it's really not that complex.
It's pretty much exactly how it sounds.
But people aren't used to it, so it's hard to recognize. So
for sure.
And there's some great history there. Speltzes came most likely from Germany, maybe from the Czech Republic area when we do family history. There's not a lot of records, so we're able to track it back to northern Germany kind of. It's kind of loose, but you also come from Miller, which is Mom's side, and you also come from Frainer, and you come from Woolsey.
Yep, and they're from Bern, Switzerland.
Yeah, I think that's the Frainer side.
Is that the Frainer side?
Yeah, Miller's, I can't remember where.
I can't remember either.
I think they're just Welsh, maybe English area, England area, and then Woolsey is the same English.
Okay.
So, So kind of a European ancestry. We're all mutts, in the United States. So we're all mixtures of things.
Right.
I have a little bit of Native American in me from my grandpa Woolsey. He had some, but it's very minor,
Right.
So it'd be interesting to do one of those DNA tests and kind of see.
Right. The 23andMe.
Right.
Yeah.
What are all the different pieces that you come from? But so let's dive into some of these things. We took down some notes, and we'll start with the top one: honesty and integrity. And this is something that's super important to me. I always say people are more important than money. And so if it comes to a dispute, I would rather, err on the side of the people than on, oh, they owe me this or they owe me that. Right. So that's always been important to me. It came from my dad. My dad was super honest. He just, I remember he sold insurance for a short period, 5 to 7 years. I don't remember how long, but wasn't his favorite thing. He wasn't, necessarily a salesman. He did okay because he was good with people, but it wasn't his, favorite thing to do. But I remember people coming to me and they're like, your dad is so awesome. He's amazing. And I'm like, why? And they'd say, well, he gave me an insurance quote, went through all our paperwork, and then compared and contrast and said, you're better off staying where you're at. You shouldn't change. This is not worth it.
Yeah.
And he just was that way. There was no doubt about it in his mind. He's not like, well, we'll give you better this or better that. He just was like, you're better off where you're at.
Right.
People love that. And some of them would switch anyway because they admired that honesty. And I think that's something that was instilled in me from the very beginning is just tell the truth, be honest with people, be transparent, talk about when there's a problem, face up to it. So, and then the other example that you had was your Grandpa Miller. Grandpa Miller was an accountant, and he got a job at a doctor's firm. I think it was doctors or attorneys or something. Anyway, it was a professional firm. And he got this job. They had 7 kids, and he was getting paid really well. I don't know how much it was, but back in that time, it was the first time they'd ever made good money.
Yeah.
And Mom was little. They were living in Georgia. Mom picked up a little Georgia Southern accent for a little while, and Oliver, they started calling, yes, ma'am. And, they started picking up all of those things because they were little, they just do. And this first time they could afford things. They had a nice house. They had nice cars, and he was their accountant, and he figured out that they were lying, that they were cheating on the billings. And he confronted them about it, and they were like, just ignore it. It's why you get paid so well. And he was like, nope. He quit and got in the car, started driving back to Utah to come be by family and try to figure out his life. And their van broke down in Alabama, and they ended up having to get a job in Alabama and do some stuff there, and then eventually made their way back to Utah. But just his integrity was too important to him. He was like, I'm not doing this.
Right.
And, it could cause problems.
And I feel like a lot of people would stay, if they found out that they were making extra money, even though the doctors may not have been being the most honest about it, they probably would have stayed just because the money is nice and they needed it. Big family, he's got to feed kids and 7 kids, which is a lot of mouths to feed. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's pretty impressive. The fact that he was willing to not only like halfway, most of the way across the country with his big family, but he was just willing to eat, that was most important to him, is that he felt like he was being honest. And I think that's cool. I think that's something that you guys instilled in us, very young. And I remember there was one time you told me, I can't remember the context of how you told me, but I've always thought about this. I love this quote, but you told me that you value trust over love because you can always love somebody, but you can't always trust them, which is super, super true. It's hard, kind of a hard truth sometimes, especially if it's family or whatever, somebody that you're really close with. You can always love them, but it's hard when you can't trust somebody, So
that shared blood makes you love them automatically. But if if they've lied to you over and over again, my mom has a brother that is just not good. He just makes bad choices constantly, and nobody trusts him.
Right.
Not a good guy. And they still love him.
Right.
Still part of the family, still blood. But what other examples do you remember of learning honesty and how valuable it was? Not like we're always honest, that we do everything.
Right.
Like we've all lied and cheated on. I cheated my way through high school German. There was a girl that sat in front of me, and I just copied her homework every day. She was nice enough to let me, and I totally got a C in that class, and that was good enough for me.
Right.
I can only count in German. That's all I can do.
That's awesome. I don't know. I'm trying to think of like an example. I mean, I know like we've had things, especially in Roof Max, where there were things that happened, and it might have sucked to be honest and just say, hey, we kind of screwed up on this, but we always make it right, and then that reflects in our, our rapport and our reputation in the community, right? If we take care of people, even though we might have messed up, then they typically love you even more after,
It's true.
that honesty. Same thing like as grandpa selling insurance, like I tell people all the time, I'm like, listen, this might not make sense for you. If their roof is a little too far gone, and I'm like, it might not qualify for the full 5 years, might not make it all the way. A lot of times people are surprised. They're like, oh, okay, well, then let's get it replaced or whatever,
Right.
But typically people aren't used to that, especially in the roofing world. There's a lot of dishonest roofers.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, I feel like we've built a lot of rapport with our customers, and our reputation in the area has grown just because we're willing to tell people, hey, it's too early. You don't need this yet. Call me back in a couple years.
Right.
Or it's too far gone. Like if this isn't going to make it through the 5-year warranty, I'd recommend replacing it,
And we've heard others do the opposite.
Yeah.
They're like, well, they called, so they're interested in it, and I'll sell it to them.
Right. Well, that's just never been our style,
cool.
So I'd rather take care of people than put money in my pockets, and then that goes a long way too. They're going to refer their friends to us. They're going to make sure and take care of us because we took care of them. So yeah.
I think when you're honest, you don't ever have to worry about the blowback, because the blowback comes when things aren't what they appeared. Right. And people get really upset with that. We make mistakes all the time in the magazines. And
Sure.
I just go to people and I'm like, all right, I'm going to make it up to you. I'm going to figure out a way to help you, or at worst case scenario, I'll give you your money back. I'll write you a check and you'll have your money back.
Yeah.
Or best case scenario, we'll take care of you in some way. We'll do something extra for you and give you a boost. So, but yeah, that's a good one. Okay. So our second one we wrote down is hard work. And we definitely come from a long line of hard workers, a lot of farming and ranching in our family's history. And Grandpa Frainer actually started working at 8 years old. So Mom said, she's like, well, because I went over this list with her, and she's like, well, I just remember when I was trying to get the kids to do chores, and they're so young and like little. Yeah. And she's like, man. But then she's like, I remember Grandpa Frainer had to move pipe. So they would manually pick up the pipe and move it across the field to help water the next section.
Right.
And he did that starting at 8.
That's crazy.
And then at 14, she told a story. They were digging trenches. There was some flooding that happened. They're from the St. George area. There was some bad flooding, and they were doing some trenching to like help mitigate the water. And there were all these men, and then Grandpa Frainer, and he was digging this trench all by himself. And there was guys working together, but he was just like doing it exactly right. And the foreman comes over. He's like, everybody get out of the trench and come over here and look at Dale. Look at what Dale's doing. This is perfect. This is how you're supposed to do it. And he was 14.
14 years old.
Everybody's looking at him as the example. So
that's awesome. That's cool. Yeah, and I remember like very young, you guys started me like mowing the lawn at 8 years old. I remember I was like so little, like the lawnmower felt huge. Mm-hmm. And we had that massive backyard in our house before this one that was like, we were on like almost a 3/4 acre. Was it a half acre?
Little over a half acre.
Little over. And I just remember it felt like an acre to an 8-year-old.
Long. It wasn't super deep.
Yeah.
It was this really long,
super
stretched.
Long. Yeah, but I just remember pushing the mower around, and I was like, man, this sucks. My friends don't have to do this. I'm like in 3rd grade or whatever. But eventually I turned that into a business, because I was like, well, I know how to do the work. I'm not scared of mowing lawns. So I decided might as well go out and try and make some money doing it, you know?
And even your sisters have all mowed the lawns. And they used to break it up, and they had sections that they named, and, they had to each take part.
Which I think is hilarious because I used to have to mow the whole thing by myself.
Yeah.
But they just divided and conquered. Kind of cool.
They benefited from having partners. And
right.
My mom was also a super hard worker. I remember she ran a daycare out of our house and a joy school. It was kind of like a preschool. And then she did flowers, weddings. She did crafts. She had these craft shows. That's where I get my serial entrepreneurship, because she always had a new idea, some way to.
Right.
But she was also extremely creative, which I also chalk up to getting from her, that ability to see things in a different way from the world and want to create something that's exciting and new, that's fun, that people really enjoy. I'm working on a couple new projects even right now, and I love the idea of providing a service that people are like, that's awesome. I love the magazines because of that, and our whattoeatfordinner.com is one of those things, and we're working on a new one called everythingtodoutah.com, which is going to be a cool one with events and things, everything that anybody could possibly want to do.
That's sweet.
A listing, but do it in a way that's more entertaining and
for sure. And there's a lot of fun things that you could put on that list in Utah. Utah's pretty interesting.
Yep.
Got a lot of cool places to see and go.
It's incredible.
It really is. Yeah, it's weird that we live here. Like, you take it for granted until I moved away for a summer to go do summer sales, and I came back and I was like, oh, the mountains. I missed them so much, because in Florida and Texas, it is just flat. Like, can't see any. They call hill, like a medium-sized hill, a mountain. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, it's kind of funny.
I had a girlfriend before my mission, first year of college, and she lived in Centerville. And we were in college in Idaho, and parts of Idaho have pretty mountainous terrain, but a lot of it's mostly flat. Very hilly, very like interesting area, lots of water, big rivers, great place to go fishing. But we came home one time to her family, and she's like, oh, there's my mountain. I missed it while I was gone. And I was like, what? I didn't understand it till I lived here, because now when we come home, I'm like, oh, there's the mountains. I don't know, it's so beautiful.
There's something magical about just being up there too.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Okay, so the next one, you wrote, stubborn as a mule.
Yeah, and this is kind of a two-part thing. I just kind of wrote it in between. Okay. But our family is so stubborn. Like, if we want something, it's like our way or the highway. Like, and you better get out of our way, because we get what we want. You know, even if it's not necessarily the best thing for us, like, we'll push it something until. And I think Cameron is a really good example of this, because I think she's probably the most stubborn. Other than her and Ellie are really close.
In a different way, though.
In a different way. But if Cameron wants to figure something out, she's going to go freaking do it. And, like, if you get in her way, she's going to freak out at you.
Yeah.
And
highly determined.
Extremely determined. And, like, when we get our mind on something and we really want it, like, we're going to do anything we can to get there. There is kind of a cool quote that I've been thinking about lately from Leonardo da Vinci, and it's called Ostinate Rigore. I probably butchered how to say that. It's like Latin or something, but it roughly translates to stubborn rigor. And I love that. That was his mantra. So
I love that.
Leonardo da Vinci, everybody thinks of him as this artist, right? Like this incredible artist, which is obviously a big part of why he's still well known today, but that's only like a tiny piece of what Leonardo da Vinci was, because he was a scientist, a mathematician, a linguist. He had so many different things, a philosopher, like, but that was his mantra, and that was his way of pushing past procrastination, or like something that was difficult that he couldn't quite wrap his hand around. People reported hearing him whisper under his breath, "Ostinate rigore," and that was his way of pushing forward. He just knew that he had that stubborn rigor, that iron will, that no matter what, he was going to figure it out. He was going to get to the bottom of whatever he was researching or drawing or doing. He was going to do it. Not only the best, like he just strove for excellence, but it was just nothing was going to get in his way. And I think our family has that a little bit, where if we get something on our mind, like there's nothing that's going to stop us. We have that iron will where nobody's going to talk us out of it, even if it's a dumb thing, even if it's something stupid. Like we went disc golfing the other day, and I'm new to disc golf, but we were at the Fort, which
Fort
is
Buenaventura.
Like, which is like, they had worlds there for disc golfing not too long ago.
It's an incredible course.
Super difficult though, like incredibly difficult. And there's one
It's through the
box.
forest. Like,
it's through the woods. Like you're chucking it and just hoping it doesn't hit any trees.
You're hoping it only hits 3 trees.
Right. Yeah.
Some holes.
On some of them. But there was one where you got to throw it over a river. And right before, he tells me, he's like, okay, you don't want to throw it like this. You're going to throw it like this, and it's going to go straight in the river. And I was like, I'm not going to listen. I'm not doing it. I'm just going to do it this way. And sure enough.
I tried a couple times.
I
tried on the walk over to it. I knew what was going to happen. And then I tried when you were on the tee box, and you're like, whatever.
I was like, yeah, I'm just going to do it. And I did it. And sure enough, it went right in the river. And it was lost. So, but that's that stubborn, iron will, where I'm just like, no, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm doing it my way, or it's not happening, So
there's another
kind of to a
quote
fault sometimes
that I love that's called persist until you succeed.
Yeah.
Which is a version of that.
Yeah.
And there's also Chet Holmes. He was an author and a business trainer, and I think he actually would have been quite big if he hadn't gotten cancer. He actually passed away from cancer at a fairly young age. I mean, he was in his 40s or early 50s, but he was a martial artist too, and very, very rigorous in his training. But he'd go into organizations and he would teach their sales teams something, And then he would get really frustrated because he'd come back a few weeks later and they're like, oh, we tried that. It didn't work. He's like, what do you mean you tried that? It didn't work. You didn't try it because it works.
Yeah.
And so then he'd come back in and retrain it. And he's like, as a business leader, you have to have pig-headed stubbornness.
Yeah.
Pig-headed stubbornness, meaning you can't give up. When you tell your people how to do something and then they don't do it, you have to repeat. It's similar to marketing, right? You got to constantly say the same things over and over and remind people of why. So in some ways, we're also the family on the negative side that we will completely, immerse ourselves into a disaster just because we want to try it.
Right.
We're not the family that you say that stove is hot and we're like, okay, steer clear of the stove. We're like, really? And we go touch it and then we burn ourselves. We're like, oh, you're right, it is hot. Like, dumb.
Typically have to learn the hard way, and sometimes a couple times.
Yeah, most of the time.
Most of the times.
At that same piece, though, the next thing is face challenges and problems head on. So we have family fights. We're quite vocal. One of these podcasts, I actually want to just set up some cameras and video the family at family dinner, just for fun, because we can lead a discussion, but really, if they'll relax and just do their normal thing, it's pretty entertaining.
It'd be funny, yeah.
Because there's just, everybody's got something to say and contribute, and sometimes it's political, sometimes it can get heated, sometimes it's about a person in the family and about their shortcomings or whatever.
Sometimes it's like little jabs and stuff, just like kind of teasing each other, and
it's kind of fascinating, kind of interesting. But when we do have problems, we're able to go to each other and say, and we're aware enough, I think, most of the time, where we can say, hey, did I offend you? Or I didn't mean to, I was just teasing. I can feel like you took this personally. Or, hey, I'm having a problem with this. It's not easy to do those things when you're having a problem. Another thing I like to do is when things don't go well, I just had this happen with a client, 2 magnificent failures in a row. And I called them and I was like, where are we at? How do we stand? And I said, because we've had 2 magnificent failures in a row and some communication issues and some other problems. And I'm like, where are you at? And he's like, I really appreciate you calling, because he's like, he's the one paying.
right.
And he's like, I'm in this uncomfortable situation where I'm like, I need to talk about this. But instead of waiting for him to come to me or trying to brush it under the rug, I went to him and I was like, all right, let's figure this out. Like, we got to fix this problem if we're going to keep working together. So, in fact, one of the things I put on here was a family friend. I'm not going to name names because they are friends, but they witnessed us have a fight, a family blow up. And I don't even remember. Were you there?
I don't think so.
I don't think you were there. But Ellie was feeling really attacked. I can't even remember the situation. This is one of the benefits of, Melissa always says, one of the benefits of being married to me is I don't remember the bad stuff.
Yeah.
I just don't remember it. Once it's over and done, I move on.
Yeah.
I don't hold a grudge. I just don't. So, but they watched us have this meltdown, just from bawling tears to then confronting it, walking through it, talking about it, having an honest conversation, hearing some of the hard things that Ellie was dealing with, where she was saying how she perceived some of the things that I had done. Primarily it was me. And then when we got to the other side of it, this friend said, if my family talked like this, we would have way less problems. Because a lot of families, when they have those fights, they just brush it under the rug.
Right. Just ignore it. Try to push it way down. Yeah, I think it's, I never even realized that, that we were like this until I got a little bit older. And even Nikhil, my girlfriend, she'll say stuff. She's like, it's so weird that you guys just talk about things, and even uncomfortable things. We'll just talk about it at the dinner table. And it's kind of like teasing each other and stuff like that. But I remember when I was younger, we'd get in fights and you'd make us sit on the couch until we were friends. and it sucked, and you hated each other. But then after 5-10 minutes of just sitting there, just kind of glaring at each other, then you realize
at opposite ends of the couch.
Yeah,
one hugging one arm and the other hugging the other.
And then we're like, well, we're in timeout anyways. Might as well figure it out and have fun and whatever, Yeah. But we would always figure things out as soon as it happened. If we got in an argument or something, and I actually kind of hated it, but we would go sit in the front room. I remember many, many times me sitting in the front room with you and Mom, and you're like, nope, we're sitting here until we figure it out. Like, we're going to talk this through right here and right now, or it's never going to happen, And so we would sit down, we'd talk through things. And sometimes it's hard because in the moment you're heated, you're emotional, you kind of hate the other person's guts a little bit. You want to just like,
a lot of it.
Want to fight them,
Yeah.
But after about 10 minutes of sitting there and cooling off a little bit, you realize it's okay. We can talk about this. And then I'm the same way where I don't remember the bad stuff.
Yeah.
Like, as soon as I talk about something and I feel like it's been resolved and I feel okay about it, I feel like the other person feels good about it. Sometimes it takes some apologizing, most of the time on my end, because it's typically me that's being a jerk or pissing somebody off. But you feel way better after, and it's water under the bridge. I don't even think about it anymore. The other thing is that we're super blunt with each other, like extremely blunt. We'll say things how they are and how we feel, and I think that's important, just because a lot of people will make things seem a little softer. You don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, so it's a good and a bad thing. For us, it's a two-sided coin, right? Because when we're talking to other people, they aren't like us,
they're not used to
so sometimes we piss people off or hurt people's feelings. Like, I've had that happen many, many, many times, and I'm sure it'll continue to happen for the rest of my life, just because that's how I grew up with you, If I was being an idiot, you'd be like, dude, you're being an idiot. And I'd be like, oh, okay. Well, try to stop doing that. Or I just completely disregard anything you're saying, But yeah, no, it's, there it is again. But yeah, no.
But yeah, no.
I say that so much. It drives me crazy. Oh my goodness, freaking Utah. But we're super blunt, and that's a good and a bad thing, but it helps us kind of get to the bottom of things, If we're really mad about something, we're going to tell the other person, we're going to tell them exactly how we feel and why, and I feel like that helps us get to the bottom of it,
It does.
Because you know exactly where somebody's coming from, even if it's a little abrasive, even if it feels like they're kind of coming after you a little bit. It's always better in the end, because you know exactly how that person feels. You know what you need to apologize about. So nothing gets held back. Nothing gets swept under the rug, like you said. And I think that helps us get through things a lot quicker.
My mom was like that. That's probably where it comes from, because like even those awkward questions when you're a kid, I remember going to my mom and saying, "Hey mom, what does F mean?" And I said the F bomb. And instead of saying, "Oh my gosh, don't say that," you know what I mean? Because we don't speak that way in our house. So she was just like, she's like, "Well, it's a word. It's considered a bad word, so you probably shouldn't say it."
Yeah.
And she said it means sexual intercourse, basically.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh." I had no idea. I was just a kid, and then she's like, "But people also use it to like tear down on someone," and she just went through the whole thing, like no anger, no fear about the word or me using it or anything like that. And that's one of the most significant ones for me, but that was how she was. She just wasn't afraid of a topic, and she wasn't afraid to tell me what she thought. I
think it's funny because I have a very similar story, but Mom, interestingly, she's not naturally like this. I think she's become like this just because of being married to you and just how we talk as a family, And so she's kind of naturally adopted this over a long period of time, But as a kid, very similar story. We were at a park and somebody had spray painted the F word on the slide. So I come down the slide and I'm like, F, 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 Mom, what does F mean? And she's like, oh my goodness, don't say that. Like just totally freaked out. She's like, and there were other families at the park. Yeah. So I think she was mostly just like mortified that I'm running around dropping the F-bomb as like a 9-year-old. And I'm like, and she's like, don't say that. And I was like, why? She's like, it's a bad word. And I was like, but it sounds so stupid. It sounds like duck. I was like, that doesn't make any sense to my little 9-year-old head. I'm trying to figure out why, first of all, somebody spray painted that on the slide. And second of all, why it's bad. Right. And she was just freaking out because I kept saying it. And then eventually we had to talk later, and she told me why and explained it to me. But I think part of it was just the fact that there were other kids on the playground. It's embarrassing. Yeah, for sure. But kind of funny. Just remembered that.
Yeah, I wonder if my mom, if we were around other kids like that, how she would have responded, because she was really calm about it, you know. But my high school friends would show up to my house, and I'd come home from work or whatever, sports, pull into the driveway, and I'd see their car. I'd be like, oh, I always knew all my friends, cars, and I'd be like, oh, so-and-so's here to visit me. And I'd go inside, and they're sitting on the couch talking to my mom, dealing with some traumatic situation going on in their life. They weren't there for me at all. They were there for my mom. But because my mom was so easy to talk to, and so honest with them. And she would tell them when they're screwing up too. Yeah. And she'd give them, she just had straight talk, which is rare. So one of my employees, she's awesome. And when she first started working for me, I was like, oh man, I hope I don't like offend her, because like I'm pretty direct. And eventually she just coined the term. She was like, well, Ryan's direct but kind, because I'm not trying to hurt anybody or make anybody feel bad, but I will tell them what's going on, and I'll strongly recommend they change their ways or do something different. But if something is screwed up, like the best way to approach that is to tackle it head on, figure it out, figure out a solution. And you have to sometimes tell people, like, I'm not attacking you. We got to figure this out. This is really important. And so I need you and me to work on it together and figure out where the problem is, because this does not serve us and it does not serve our customers to do it this way. We got to do better. And sometimes when I'll send an email and I'll say, this is a mistake, we got to fix this, I'll have employees write emails, this is my fault, they'll take all this responsibility. And I'm like, there's no fault. This is a company. So we just have to get a better system. If we're going to make mistakes, we're going to learn to do better from a system standpoint. But being direct always has helped that.
Yeah.
So my next question is this. Obviously, some of these things we're talking about the positive, right? We're talking about how they impacted your life for the good. But I also know, just because it's the nature of parenting in childhood, some of it had to have been traumatic for you too. Some of it had to have been like, even maybe still carrying some weight. Is there anything you can think of like that?
I think there's one thing for sure that I've noticed in me more so than, obviously I can't speak for my siblings, but I feel like when I was very young, you were super, super excited to have a son, and you just wanted me to like do all these things with you, learn things fast. A story that popped into my head is like before I even turned 1, you bought me a basketball hoop and you put it in the back, and Mom was like, what the heck? He can't even like hardly walk, dude. Like, why are you buying him a basketball hoop? And it's just like, you were super excited. You wanted me, you want to play basketball with me.
My favorite gifts of all time were always balls.
Right.
I just wanted a football or basketball or something. I don't know.
Right.
Baseball.
Well, and there's obviously, you have a ton of hobbies too. Like one good example of it that I think I always use is fishing. You've always loved fishing. Like I just remember that from a very young age, you were always constantly out going fishing. And I remember one of the first times, probably wasn't the first, but just one of my first memories of fishing with you. I just remember you were so pissed at me because I kept tangling up my line, getting caught in trees, and you just wanted to fish. You just wanted to be out in the river catching fish, and instead you're helping your 5 or 6-year-old son figure out how to untangle his. And I'm like barely paying attention. I'm playing with sticks in the mud, and
I did not care.
I didn't care, and I think that pissed you off a little bit, but then also just the fact that I was, impeding your fishing
constantly.
Because you'd help me untangle it, and then you'd walk 5 feet away, and I'd cast again, get it all tangled up again. You're like, oh, like looking at it now, I'm like, oh, dude, I'd be so annoyed too. Like that would suck. But we went fishing multiple times when I was younger, and at a certain point, I was like, I hate fishing. I'm never fishing again, and I think that probably hurt you a little bit. You were probably sad about that, but it was that impatience for me where I was just like, gosh, I just can't even I don't even want to figure it out because I know I'm going to mess up, and then he's just going to be mad because he can't fish. And I didn't see it like that, but I was just like, oh, he was so mad at me. And as a result, I am extremely impatient with people, and I've gotten better at recognizing it in the moment, but I'm still not perfect at it. Like a lot of times I'll get impatient with my girlfriend or with my friends or just, everyday people because I feel like one of the things that you always instilled in me was like, you're really good at things. Like you told me that I could figure things out no matter what. But then you also expected excellence. Like if I was going to do something, I had to be really good at it. And sometimes if I didn't figure things out right away, it would be really hard for me because I felt like I wanted to figure it out. I wanted to be good at it, but I just wasn't. And so a lot of times I would just give up. I'd just be like, I don't even want to do it. I don't even want to go fishing because I know I'm just going to make him mad or I'm not going to be good enough at it. So it's kind of a two-sided thing where it's like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it the best I can possibly do it. And if I suck at it, I'm going to figure it out and it's that mania that we have. Like it becomes a mania for me where I'm like, I have to figure this out, and it just consumes me. So it's a good thing because I figure things out and I get good at things. But I'm also really impatient with myself, where if I don't figure something out right away, I'm really hard on myself. I beat myself up. But then it's also the other side, the flip side of that, where if somebody isn't instantly good at something or isn't living up to the, standard that I hold myself to, then I'm extremely impatient with them, which I think is another Spelts thing. We hold ourselves to a higher standard than what I would imagine most people would, just because that's what some people.
Some are even higher.
Right, for sure. But yeah, I feel like that impatience is something that I've had to learn how to kind of counter and calm a little bit.
I hear both of those, even from your siblings. And I mean, I had to learn to be aware of it and change it too. I'm a much more patient person, but I was just impatient with your mom, like literally before this podcast recording, because she couldn't figure out how to use, software, and that's definitely not her strength. And so she was just annoyed with the computer and then really frustrated with me because she was on a Zoom call while I was being impatient with her. So I was just like, just click on this, just do this. And she was like, can you just come show me? And, it's still something I aspire to, is being more patient and kind. But, and I'm definitely more patient, like with Gray, than I was with you. And I'm more patient with even fishing. And Gray was drawn to fishing a lot earlier than you because I didn't lose my freaking mind on him and give him a rash of crap every time he tangled up the line. I would show him how to do it. I'd be patient, and I wasn't so worried about catching fish myself. I was still a young man when I was your dad, when I was raising you. Mm-hmm. You were born when I was like 24.
Yeah, so my age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was young. I was a kid too in a lot of ways. But so now I am a kid and a dad. You really don't know what the fetch you're doing. And as age happens, you start to realize your parents were just trying to do their best, and they had their flaws and their strengths and their weaknesses. But one thing I really like that we instilled in you is that desire to be excellent at things. And your siblings say that too, because I would hold them accountable. I don't think that I think I maybe pushed a little too hard on a lot of it. Just, I had this like demanding expectation. But I think the one challenge I faced is I could see my kids, and all of you are similar in this way. You're all smart. There's not any learning disabilities in our family. You're all sharp, which is different. Like the ability to like discern in a situation, know what to do, how to handle it. And each of my kids has all these amazing talents. Like they're really talented in different ways, but they're really talented. And I am that type of a person that sees the positive in people. And so when you would fall short, it was really hard as a dad to just be okay with that and be like, I'm okay with whatever, like I wanted you to be better than I was. And that's a challenge as a parent, like, because I remember, and I can think back on all of my failures as a kid and even as an adult, and I can say, oh my gosh, I wish I was better. I wish I hadn't done that. Why was I so dumb? So you see your kids doing dumb things and you're like, don't be dumb. Don't be like me. I want you to be better than I was. And, it has a good and a bad effect, right? I think the good is that it says, hey, you should have high demands for yourself. Do excellent work. If you're going to do something, do it good. Mm-hmm. I say that all the time. Or do it well is probably more proper, but
sure.
I say do it good. But there's also that piece where if you can't be satisfied, like what does success look like to you? If you could say in your mind, I've succeeded, what does that look like to you?
Just that I did my best, Just that no matter what, I knew that I put every ounce of what I had into what I was trying to do.
So what if you don't do your best? You're not successful?
Well, you might not feel as good about it, I feel like that's kind of on a personal level, though, like there's definitely been times in my life where I didn't put my all into something. And you kind of regret it later, but I guess the only thing you can really do is just learn from that. Mm-hmm. That's kind of a hard realization, though, to realize that you didn't put your all in. You didn't try as hard as you possibly could. I think everybody has that. Nobody's perfect, right? Nobody puts their all into everything. But I
had somebody ask me, they're like, how do you know when you succeeded? And I had never actually visualized what it looked like. I had an unattainable goal because it didn't exist. I was just like, I got to do more. And they're like, you can't always do more. It's not more forever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what does that look like? What do you do? And I remember interviewing sort of with Grandpa Miller because we were in between jobs. And I was like, well, maybe I could work for Grandpa Miller. And we talked about my skill set and we talked about things I had done and ideas I had. And he said, I just don't think this would work. I think you're very talented and I would like working with you, but I just don't want to grow anymore. And you're a salesperson, like you would go out and try to get us more accounts. And he's like, the business is where I want it to be. I don't want it any bigger. When I lose a client, I go get another one, but I don't want to add a bunch of clients because that means a bunch more employees and all that. He knew what success felt like to him. He was at that point. And they were doing well. They were making great money, but I couldn't even fathom that. I was like, why? Why wouldn't you want to grow? Like, it didn't make sense. It does now. Because I'm like, that makes sense. They just had enough. They were happy with what they had built, and it was a hard road. But I think as parents, you compensate for your own failures and your own weaknesses. You try to compensate in your kids because you watch your kids and like, you were better at things than I was. You were better at drawing. I was good at drawing. You were better at drawing. I was good at baseball. You were better at baseball. And so I would have given anything at a young age to be a professional baseball player. Like that was my thing. And you got to a certain point and you're like, I don't want to do it anymore. And I'm sure there's some part of you that regrets part of that, but at the same time, it just wasn't your thing anymore. You had grown past the need for baseball in your life. And I grew to the point where I couldn't progress anymore. You still had progression available. And as a parent, that was really hard. It was just like, what? You're giving up on my dream? How could you? You know?
Yeah.
And you don't share that dream. So it's kind of interesting. But that's a challenge as a parent because it's not conscious that you're doing that. And I see it all the time in parents. They're like pushing their kids to chase their dream, you know, whatever that is.
I think that baseball was a hard one for me. And I think you and I probably remember it a little differently. But I struggled with school. Not struggled in school, because if I showed up and if it wasn't a homework, I never did homework. It's a wonder that I even learned anything. But I just never did homework because I was like, this either was something I didn't care about, or it was so easy to me that I didn't care at all. It was so easy that I was just like, whatever. You know, I would go through classes, and if they didn't have a lot of homework, I would get a B, a C, and it's just because I would ace the tests because I just had a really good memory, a really good short-term memory. So like I could study up like 15 minutes before a test, read through everything, and get a B on the test.
Just enough
To where I, just barely skim by, But as a result of that, I wanted to play baseball. I quit football because I loved baseball. And the football coaches were pissed at me because I was pretty big for like a sophomore coming into high school, and they wanted me to play football really bad, but I was just like, I love baseball. Like I wanted to play baseball. And I kind of had that a similar dream too, where I wanted to play at least in college. Like I loved that idea of playing sports. And baseball, like the reason I chose baseball is because I didn't love football. Right. I was probably better at football in some ways.
Maybe. Yeah.
But I just had this passion for baseball. I loved pitching. I loved playing baseball. And I just loved the sport. Like, it's such an amazing sport. Mm-hmm. But the coaches didn't like me because I wasn't a student. I was barely present in school. Yeah. If I was in school, I was in La La Land. I was doodling in my notebooks.
And the coaches were teachers, too.
And the coaches were teachers. And it was also partially political. Like, it was, they had their teams that they had been coaching since they were super young, and that was the age above me. So that was the grade ahead of me, and our grade didn't have a team like that. And so I had a couple friends that played baseball, but because I didn't get good grades, I couldn't maintain, at least D's. I always had F's and stuff. I would get cut every single year. But I wanted to play baseball so bad, and I don't know, I definitely remember it differently because I didn't give up on it. There were 2 years where I remember I was the first one to practice and I was the last one to leave. I would help them clean everything up, and I just wanted so badly to just get the coaches to like me. There was one that really liked me, but the head coach did not. Yeah. And he might not even think that now, might not think that he didn't like me, but he really,
it was frustrating.
It was really hard for me because it didn't matter how hard I tried to please him. I wasn't willing to put in the piece that he needed from me, which was get good grades. And I wasn't willing to do that. I just hated school. I had such a hard time being there.
And that's the piece that I'm actually talking about.
Yeah.
Is because it's not like you couldn't have done school.
For sure.
You just didn't want to.
I didn't want to.
Because you were smart, your brain is quick, you have the ability to learn. But if you weren't into it,
it was
no thanks.
Not happening, for sure.
You had no interest in it.
Yeah, and that was hard for me. And it made me realize, sometimes you have to do things in life that you don't want to get what you want,
True.
Right? But that was tricky for me. So I disagree. I don't think I gave up on baseball because I tried really, really hard for years.
Except for doing your homework.
Except for doing my homework. That was the only thing I wouldn't try on. But I mean, like when it came to practices, when it came to workouts, like I was always the first one there. I was always the last one running. I was always the last one, cleaning things up. And I tried for 2 years. And then on the last, my senior year, I was like, I'm not even going to try. They don't even recognize how hard I'm trying to, make them like me. But he wasn't, that was probably a good thing on him. He was willing to, hold that standard and just say, listen, this is the team that I'm building. Like, you have to have this piece. You have to be a good student to be on my team. Yeah. And I get it. That was frustrating for me because, and especially in hindsight, looking back, like I was not designed to sit in a classroom for 8 hours straight and listen. If I want to learn that stuff, I'll go freaking learn it on my own,
It's true. And that's your style now.
For sure.
You're definitely not the traditional student style, but you learn things like you wouldn't believe. You're digging into video editing and all of those things right now. You've dug into graphic design. You've dug into all these different aspects, and you study them, you master them, you do good. And I think I knew that about you, and that's why I was frustrated. I was like, just sit in class. Like, because to me, if the piece was that easy, I wasn't as good as you were at baseball. So I wasn't really in the running for that to have mattered. And as a parent, I was like, dude, just do the homework. Like, It's not that hard. It's not even hard homework. Like, it's just stupid high school homework. And that was the piece where I became probably impatient and felt a little bit like I had failed as a parent. That's the worst when you put your emotions onto the kid, And as I've gotten older, I'm at a point now where I'm like, it's okay for my kids to fail. It's important for them to fail, actually, and to have dreams fall short. In your case, right? The baseball dream falls short because we knew you loved it and you were good at it. I'm not saying you were like the greatest kid to ever walk the field, but you were really good and you were always really athletic. So it's kind of interesting to see that. But well, in conclusion, I have one more question for you. I saw this quote the other day and I wrote it down. It says, one of the most insidious forms of child neglect is a parent who doesn't chase their dreams and potential. So do you feel like growing up in this household, you were taught to chase your dreams, that it was ingrained in you that if you want something, not only should you go for it, but you can go for it?
For sure. Yeah. I think from a very young age, and you've talked about like you didn't really feel like you were chasing your dreams until you started Connection. But I don't know. I feel like even before that, like as a little kid, you just always told us we could do anything that we wanted, But there was no limitation other than ourselves, right? Where we were just, I don't know, pushed to a different level too. You'd also, if we were going to chase something and we wanted to do something like art for me, you pushed me. You made sure I had paper to draw on, even if it was really expensive, just constantly buying paper like crazy.
And
but pencils and all that
all
stuff.
This art stuff that I have no idea how expensive it was.
It's ridiculous. It can get pricey. That's the nice thing about the iPad is I don't have to go through
have
paper anymore.
Oh yeah, you have $1,000 thing now that you use.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. But yeah, no, I feel like it helps a lot too when you can watch your parents chase their dreams, even if it's really difficult. Like I've seen you guys go through some really high highs, but also some really low lows where it's difficult, where you guys are just fighting tooth and nail to get to that ultimate dream, which who knows what that actually looks like.
What was your quote? Stubborn rigor.
Stubborn. Yeah.
We're so stubborn, we're becoming rigorous.
Right. Right. But yeah, I feel like that helps a ton. If we're being able to watch you guys chase your dreams makes it a lot easier for me to be like, okay, yeah, no, this could be attainable. It might not be easy, might not be pretty how I get there, but I know I can push to that extra level, because I don't know a single person that works as hard as you and Mom have the last 8 years. Not a single person. And maybe I'm just being ignorant, but there are
others.
I'm sure there are plenty others, and maybe I just don't see it because I don't live with them every single day. But the amount of work that I see you guys do and crap that you guys have fought through is pretty incredible. Yeah. Like the fact that you guys, what's your saying? We're still here.
Swash.
Somehow we're still here. We're still here.
Yeah.
Which is like, you may be really going through it, and struggling, but either way, you're just going to keep fighting because it's your dream. It's something you believe in, and it's something that you want, Well,
big challenges take big effort.
Yeah.
So we didn't tackle a simple business. We tackled a complex business. We tackled a complex idea, and it hasn't been easy, and we've had lots of ups and downs. But for me, I would feel more of a failure. Like even if Connection failed, let's say we went bankrupt and had to close down, lost everything, I would feel like more of a failure had I not pursued it, had I not tried, than I would having it fail after trying. And not that I want it to fail or that it is going to fail. I would feel that way. And I think that's a really important, I talk to so many people who regret. They're like, I wish I always had this idea. I wish I had pursued it, or I wish I had tried this, or I wish I had changed my career. And I'm like, why didn't you?
Yeah.
Do it. And I never taught you that you could be a 6'9" basketball player. Right? Yeah. I didn't teach you that because that's not truth. But if there's something that is attainable and possible to do, you can go for it and you can do it. And I taught that to all of you kids. And I think that's a really valuable thing. And I believe this. It's a little bit of child neglect. It's also personal neglect. When you don't chase your dreams, when you don't go for the things that you believe in and that you want to accomplish in life, it's sad, really. So... Well, I think it was a good conversation.
Yeah, I liked it.
Colby's a little more sluggish today than usual, and this was a little more subdued. We're trying this like mood lighting thing,
trying to get it set up.
I feel like a little more subdued in general, but Colby helped a buddy. So I want to tell that story because Colby has a really good friend, Isaac, that they've been friends. How old were you when you met Isaac?
8.
8 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was right when we moved here then.
Mm-hmm.
Because you had turned 8 when we moved to our other house in North Ogden.
Yeah, it was 3rd grade.
Yeah, so Isaac's truck, it was in the line to get a car wash, and it broke. The steering, something came loose or broke off. Yeah. Anyway, couldn't steer it. Mm-hmm. Engine still ran, the truck still ran, but it couldn't turn it.
The wheel would turn freely, and the tires weren't moving at all.
Yeah.
And luckily, he didn't actually go through the car wash and realize, or get stuck in it, because that would have been terrible. But
although they do have those little rails that kind of keep you straight, so he probably could have gotten
out. But then he would have been stuck at the end of the line blocking with other people, and we were sitting there for like an hour trying to figure out how we were gonna even move it. But it was quite the endeavor.
It's a big diesel too. It's
like a 10,000-pound truck.
Yeah.
And so he called me and he's like, "Dude, I need your help. Like, I'm stuck. I don't know what to do." And so I ran down there, and his dad brought a jack over, and we spent, probably, I don't even know, a few hours just trying to get because the car wash is right next to the mechanic we were going to take it to, right next to Big O Tires in North Ogden. And it's right on the main street, which is Washington Boulevard. And there's no way to get from the car wash to Big O without going on that main street. And we're like, well, it doesn't drive. We can't steer it. It's a super busy road. So what do we do? So we ended up calling another mechanic to come take a look at it. He's like, yeah, we just got to push it over there somehow. Luckily, the car still drove, but we had to manually keep the tires straight. And we had to, every time it would get stuck or like hit a curb, because we can't turn it super sharp. It's a super big truck as it is.
Long and
so we'd have to
heavy.
Jack up the truck, manually turn the tires with our hands, and then we're like Spartan kicking the tire to try and keep it straight as it's rolling super slow. So we had one guy in the truck driving really slow, creeping. As he's going, we're pushing and pulling on the tires, trying to get him to turn. But they're massive tires and a super heavy truck. So it was like impossible. We'd have to make these 3-point turns where we jack the truck up, turn the tires, back up, jack the truck up again, turn the tires. And then we had to push it all the way down the shoulder, going the wrong way on that main road.
Our
So there's
busiest road.
cars whizzing by us. I'm like freaking out at people, like getting ready to like chuck rocks at people because they're like almost hitting us. Like it was kind of scary. Just not paying attention at all. And it took us like, I don't even know how long, probably in total like 3 hours, probably an hour and a half of actually moving the truck. But I am so dead. Like I came home and I just like passed out on the couch or on my bed.
My hands and forearms.
My hands and forearms, like I couldn't move my fingers. I was trying to work on some graphics for our YouTube channel, just the header and stuff, and I couldn't even like draw because my fingers like couldn't even like make fists because and my forearms today are so shot and like every single muscle of my body is sore. But we got it done.
Isaac's dad texted me after, and he's like, I just love the relationship that Kobe and Isaac have. That anytime something goes wrong, they call each other and they're there for each other. Mm-hmm. And it's true. Isaac's done that for you.
Many times.
You've done it for him. Like, it's just the way you two are. And it's awesome. You guys have been really good, close friends, gone through everything together.
Yeah.
Being like best friends and friggin' hating each other
yeah.
and like pissing each other off constantly. But it's always stuck through and you've always been able to remain friends. I think it's pretty cool. And Mitch and I'm trying to think of her name. Rachel are like second parents to you.
Yeah.
You know, you spend tons of time over there as a kid.
I call them mom and dad.
Yeah. They're just awesome. Great folks. And then, you know, we love Isaac too. And
he's awesome.
He's a great kid.
That's always been our agreement is if something happens vehicle wise, we're going to help each other if we can.
We're there for each other. Yeah. That's awesome.
So,
that's
and it works out because sometimes you really need somebody and it helps to, and it goes both ways. Like, you know, I helped him yesterday, but he's helped me so many times with my vehicles. Like up on the hill one time, like my truck broke down on a mountain and it was like we were off-roading on government property. I don't know if I should admit that on camera, but I was freaked out because I was like, oh my goodness, like somebody's going to like tow my truck or I'm going to get a huge fine or whatever. And he totally came up there with me and we jerry-rigged it, figured out how to get it off the mountain. And, you know, it goes both ways. He's helped me out of some pretty crappy situations too. So, but it's kind of a cool little agreement.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So,
well, it was a fun episode, and we appreciate you tuning in to the Spelts Family Business Podcast. Father-son duo, we got a business together, and we love talking life and business and all of these things. We're eventually going to have all your siblings on. They're a little harder to talk into putting on camera. They don't want to talk. Ellie does not want to talk about business.
What do you mean? Yeah, she's like, I don't want to talk about that.
The stuff you talk about.
Yeah.
I'm like, we can talk about anything, but... Right. She's you know, eventually she'll give in, I think. So, but we'll have them on. So if you enjoy what you watch or listen to here, we invite you to like and share, help other people find out about it. Hopefully it provides some good value to you and to your friends and family. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time.
See ya.